encounter this at some point in your life where you're going to have to pretend, well, you're going to feel like you have to pretend to not be these things because you want to protect others. Meaning that people see you in a way like we say, well, people see us in a certain way. What we mean by that is people will idealize you. People will put you on a pedestal. People will think, wow, you seem like someone who always has it together, and you're an idealized role model for them. Sometimes you'll encounter little kids who will be like this. And so you have to do this in order to protect others. In a really silly way, I teach, as I mentioned before, I teach little kids jujitsu, so like little 8-year-olds, whatever. Sometimes they'll stick around and they'll come over to the adult class and they'll watch the adults when we're training. What are the odds that what are the odds that I'm ever going to tap to somebody with one of those kids watching? Zero. You're going to have to kill me, or you're going to have to break my arm, because they come to my class 2 or 3 days a week and they see me, what's up, coach? And to them, they idealize me. They just think this guy's like incredible and amazing. It's not so much an ego thing, but people need, like especially little kids, need someone to look up to. And so there are some people who they'll look up to, and you want them to think that about you. And again, not just because of your ego, but because you want to give them something to which to aspire. And sometimes, of course, there are people who just like the ego pump. They like to walk around and be like, yeah, that's right. 8-year-olds worship me or whatever. But sometimes you're doing that because you are protecting others. You want to give them a positive model because because by the way, they've already chosen to watch you. They've already chosen to follow you. They already have chosen to adore you. So now you have to kind of live your life in such a way that you're giving them a truth to adore. In other words, if someone is cranking on my arm and I would normally tap, but I'm not because the kids are watching, and so then because I don't tap, I fight out of it, well, I just learned something about myself, didn't I? I didn't have to give up. I could have fought out of it. If they weren't watching, I would have given up too early. So sometimes being a person's role model, or being idealized as their role model, makes you a better person because it causes you to live up to that expectation. And so when I say that some of you are going to experience this, what I mean is you're going to have children. And who's the strongest person in the world? Your dad. I know some of us will be like, I thought he was the fastest person in the world because he took off. Or maybe, but if he was around, then the strongest person in the world is your dad, and you're never stronger than your dad. But what's going to happen is someday, you're going to be like, whatever, like 8 years old. Come on, Dad, let's arm wrestle. Your dad's like, okay. So then you're arm wrestling your dad, and you're using 2 arms and your whole body, and you're like, oh my God, and he still beats you, and you're like, he's so strong. And then you're going to be like 16, 17, you've been going to gym a little bit, and you're like, all right, let's go, Dad, let's see what you got. And Dad so just boom, slams your arm because he's got old man strength now. And then you're going to get into like your 20s or so, late 20s, and he'll be like, he'll start getting into his 50s, and you'll see him start to struggle a little bit, And then someday you're going to beat him, and you're going to be like, holy crap, I just beat who I thought was the strongest person in the world. And it won't necessarily be like thinking like, I finally overcame it. Maybe. But it also might hit you as, holy crap, my dad's getting old. And that means that everybody gets old. And that means at some point I'm going to lose him. All of these things can start to flood in. In other words, a person who you thought was invulnerable and it could never be defeated, all of a sudden you see them defeated, and it can mess with your head. The same way as if there's a loved one, somebody who you care deeply about, and they're doing these things like they're starting to tell, you catch them telling lies, and you just thought, but to me they were perfect, they were wonderful, they're exactly what they should have been, and they're not morally perfect. And then all of a sudden you start to realize this person is different from who you thought they were. Like you all of a sudden start to realize they're not as happy as they think that they are. The new year, new me thing, all of a sudden they fail to live up to expectations. And now your view of that, they refuse to take responsibility. And now your view of them is, it messes with everything. It messes with how you see the world. Of course, it messes with how you see yourself. I was talking to second period today, and somebody mentioned, with regards to this quote, they said that his interpretation essentially was that we see what we want to see, and we hear what we want to hear. And that's true to an extent. As I've said before, none of us sees the world the way that it really is. We see the world the way that we are. So we see the world idealized through our own lens, the thing that we expect. Why is it that your dad is the strongest person in the world? Because that's how you see him. He is the strongest person in your world. He's the strongest person in your world. He's not the strongest person in the world, but the whole world is not your world. Your world is this very limited area right here. It's this very small place. You know, when you're a little kid, how far does your world go? Your whole explored world is around your parents. Everywhere that you've ever gone, they've been, except for aunts and uncles who will take you places. But by and large, everywhere that you've ever experienced has been with them by you. And so you'll see little kids, if you go to the park or the beach, they'll start to like walk away from their parents, and then they'll like stop and look just to make sure they can still be seen. And then they'll wander a little bit farther, and they'll wander a little bit farther. And you guys maybe remember doing this to a certain extent. You ever ride your bike a little bit farther than you're supposed to? And all of a sudden you feel like you've ridden into the middle of an evil forest or something like that, even though it's just like 2 blocks away from where you would normally go. Because you're pushing the boundaries of the explored world. And the farther and farther you go away from your parents, the more of the unexplored world you're encountering. And the more of the world you're making your own. The stuff that's near your parents, that belongs to them. And when you step outside of that, that's where you start to make your own world. Does this make sense? Yeah.
So it's also like what you said is like because they're children are hesitant to live the world around their parents because they fear what they don't know. The only thing they know is their parents.
Some are. Some are. You'll see some kids, and some of you, I imagine some of you were this person. You didn't necessarily look back to see, you just took off. Yeah, and your parent, you were one of the ones I expected is probably like this, and your parents were chasing you down. They're just like, oh my goodness, I don't know why he is this way, because that's the way that you are. And that will serve you well. That will serve you well in certain ways. Because you're willing to rush out and take risks. It's also going to harm you. Because you're going to be willing to rush out and take risks.
I got hit by 2 cars in one day.
What?
I got hit by 2 cars in one day.
I believe it. I believe it. Hit by 2 cars in one day.
On the same street.
Jeez. Hope not the same person.
I don't even.
That sounds intentional now. It sounds like attempted murder.
I wouldn't die. That pissed some people off.
I believe it. And that's also going to happen. You know, people will admire you as much as people are going to hate you. Yeah, but that's going to be true about a lot of our characteristics. But going back to the thing about Dad, what is it that makes Dad the strongest person in the world? It's the fact that you see them that way. This is like, and this is the essence of what love is. If any of you are in love, or if you've been in love before, you'll understand. So if you haven't yet, I hope you remember this when you get to that point. I've asked that question before of you, like, what is it that makes you so lovable? You know, when people say, like, oh, everyone deserves love. Like, why? What's so lovable about you? And people think that when I ask that question, I'm asking it like with my arms folded, like, what's so lovable about you? That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking with arms unfolded and almost like pleading with you, what is so lovable about you? Because there's something. And if you don't know what it is, then it's hard for other people, for other people to see it. But I'm not so certain that that's true. Because I wonder if any of you have ever loved somebody, or maybe you've been loved by somebody and you have no idea why they like you. You know, and you're just like, what do you see in me? And they see you in this way, oh, because you're kind and I'm nice. Yeah, you're kind, you're sweet, you're smart. I'm smart and sweet. Am I really? No. Maybe. I don't know. But you are because they see you that way. And so to them, in terms of their explored world, you are exactly what they see you as. And this is what happens sometimes is that we fall out of love, and then afterwards, like we'll see that maybe we'll see that person walking down the street, and we're like, oh my God, I was with them. Like, why? How could I be with that person? Because you saw them in a way that idealized them, and then maybe they failed to live up to the idealization that you created. It's like, but you turned out to be so mean. I said from the beginning I wasn't nice. You just saw me that way. And so we fall out of love with people because they no longer live up to the idealizations that we created for them. And so what that tells you is that what's so lovable about a person isn't necessarily what's in them. A lot of times it's what's inside of you. It's your ability to project onto the world and project into people and to see them as something other than what they actually intrinsically are or what they actively are. I see somebody as smart and sweet and kind. Why? Oh, because I love them. But they don't seem to be. Well, I think that they are. And so if I think that they are, they might as well be, because it operates exactly the same way in the world. What makes so that should also be really important to you, by the way. Because then if I ask that question, can you ever deserve the love of another person? And sometimes you might say, yeah, you can deserve the love of another person. I don't think you can ever deserve the love of somebody else. Love is a gift. Love is a sacrament that has to be taken kneeling. It's a thing that a person gives you that you really can't earn. Like you can earn loyalty maybe, you can earn trust maybe, but you can't really earn love. And we can prove this, by the way. Some of y'all are stuck in a friend zone. And you don't understand why she likes that person and not me. It doesn't make any sense. Sure it does. It makes sense because it makes no sense. Because love is like that. It's chemistry. You can't really put your finger on it. It's like she thinks that, look at him, he looks weird. But to her, he's the most beautiful thing that's ever been created. And vice versa. And then it isn't until afterwards, like when they break up, and then all of a sudden she realizes he's like 70 pounds, and he's got weird hair, and wears his hat sideways, or whatever, And all of a sudden you start to realize, he's not as attractive as I thought he was. She's not as pretty as I thought she was. And you'll start to see those flaws. And it's not that you were blind to the flaws. It's that you didn't project the flaws into them. The flaws were there, but the flaws weren't in you. And that's why you didn't project them into the other person. So you saw them not as they were, but you saw them just like you see the world, the way that you truly are. And so, if that's the case, we really can't get angry at other people for not living up to the ideals that we create for them. But we can be disappointed, of course. And I don't mean to say you can't. I just mean like it doesn't seem to make sense. But then again, neither does love, and neither does a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. And so, what makes another person so wonderful and great is not necessarily that it could be them. It could be them, but it could also just be the way that you see them. And that's what makes, again, love something so wonderful, because you don't really deserve it. But it's an incredible gift that the person gives you. And one of the things that they're giving you that's so remarkable is themselves. In other words, if someone's looking at you and saying, I think that you're this, you're all these positive things, they're giving something of themselves to you. They're imprinting themselves onto you. And so in a certain sense, a lot of times, love is, when you love somebody else, it's a form of self-love, in a certain sense. Because you're loving in them the ideals that you think a person should have, and you somehow can mine them out of the other person, which is a neat thing. It's a neat thing. And so it's fantastic when the person actually is those things or becomes those things. And this is why if somebody says that they love you and you ask them that question of like, why? Actually, you probably ask it more like, why? It doesn't make sense. Why would you love me? It doesn't make any sense. Because you're kind, because you're sweet. Now all of a sudden you realize, you go, I'm not really that kind. But you know what? I could be. I could be. Why not? Why not be the thing that other people idealize in you? When those little kids see me grappling, and in their mind, coach is unbeatable. So then you know what has to happen? Coach has to be unbeatable. I have to be. And that means that my ability to be unbeatable, it really is inside of me. But it's being brought out by those people around me. Your ability to be lovable is inside of you, of course, but it's brought out by the people around you, by the person who loves you. If we let it. If we let it. Now, a lot of times we'll reject it, and we run from it, and we fear those things, and we're afraid of the things that we've never felt before. Because to have to live up to that ideal it can cause us to be afraid that we can't live up to that ideal. In other words, if you're, the person thinks that you're very, very smart, but you're like, I'm not though, I can't live up to that. It's a fear of being unable to live up to that. And so we'll torpedo the relationship, we'll ruin it. I'd encourage you to look at love that way, that it's something that can bring out the absolute best in you. Like, hear what I'm saying? It can bring out the best in you. It doesn't plant it inside of you. It doesn't create it inside of you. It's already there. Because the other person sees it. It's real. And so if you can bring yourself to live up to that, that's how it is that you really know that you've got somebody special. Somebody who can make you a better person. And who, in turn, you can make into a better person as well. And if you've got a lifetime of one person who sees the best in you, believes in you, and who you don't want to disappoint, so you consistently live up to those things, and they do the same for you, and you're always making each other better. I don't know, can anybody name anything better than that? I think that's better than democracy. It's almost as good as buffalo wings. Almost.